I met Mrs. Eleanor Reed in the summer of 2011, long before anyone could have guessed that her name would one day be whispered across Chicago courtrooms and dinner tables. She was the sort of woman whose presence softened a room, gentle voice, eyes that smiled even before her lips did, and a patience that could tame chaos itself. She had 3 children, Amanda the eldest, Daniel her quiet son, and Lisa the youngest, radiant and headstrong, the one who would later break her mother's heart. Eleanor had worked 30 years as a nurse at Mercy Hospital. Her late husband Walter had been a fireman, a man of discipline and few words. When he died of a heart attack in 2004, Eleanor poured all her energy into her children. I remember her saying once over coffee, "My children are my retirement, my legacy, and my forgiveness for all I never became." But time has a way of stretching bonds until they snap. Lisa, her youngest, had always been the golden child, brilliant, ambitious, and unafraid to speak her mind. She graduated from Northwestern with a degree in finance and soon landed a job at a downtown investment firm. Her success became her shield, her pride, and eventually, her weapon. Where once she'd call her mother twice a day, she now replied to texts with curt busy RN messages or silence. Eleanor would often confide in me after church. "She doesn't visit anymore," she said once, folding her hands on her lap. "Daniel calls every Sunday, Amanda drops by with the kids. But Lisa, she sends money for my birthday like she's paying a bill." At first, Eleanor brushed it off as youthful distraction. But as months turned into years, a pattern formed. Lisa's visits became performance art, short, distracted, and sometimes cruelly cold. She'd glance around the house and say things like, "Mom, you really need to sell this place. It's not practical for someone your age." Or, "Maybe if you'd planned better, you wouldn't be worrying about your medical bills." Each remark carved a line into Eleanor's heart. The breaking point came on a rainy Thanksgiving night. I was there, the only non-family guest that year. The air was thick with the smell of roasted turkey and unsaid words. Eleanor had gone all out, as always, her table dressed in gold-rimmed china, candles flickering softly. Daniel and Amanda chatted warmly, their children laughing in the next room. Then Lisa arrived, 45 minutes late, her heels clicking like declarations of war. "Traffic," she said dismissively, hanging her coat without so much as a hug. Eleanor smiled, still hopeful. "I kept your favorite, the cranberry sauce with orange zest." Lisa sat, opened her phone, and began scrolling. Halfway through dinner, Eleanor asked gently, "Lisa, you've been so busy lately. Maybe we could have a weekend together soon? Just us two. We could drive to the lake house like old times." Lisa didn't look up. "Mom, I don't really have time for that kind of thing anymore. My firm's restructuring. I might move to New York next quarter." Daniel frowned. "You could spare one weekend, Lisa." She sighed, pushing her plate away. "Why does everything have to be drama? I'm not a kid anymore. You all act like I owe you my time." Eleanor's lips trembled, but she said nothing. It was Amanda who spoke. "She's your mother, Lisa. She's not asking for the world." That's when Lisa snapped. Her voice, sharp as broken glass, cut through the room. "Oh please, Amanda. Don't act like you're a saint. You visit because you need her to babysit your kids. I actually have a life." The silence that followed was painful. Eleanor rose quietly, excused herself, and went upstairs. When she didn't return after 10 minutes, I followed her. I found her in her room, holding an old photograph, a younger Lisa, smiling in pigtails, standing beside a much younger Eleanor. Her voice was barely a whisper. "She doesn't see me anymore. Only what I can give or what I remind her of, that she will one day be me." That night, after everyone left, I helped Eleanor wash the dishes. She didn't cry. She just stared out the kitchen window and said softly, "You know, I used to pray for her success. Now I just pray that success doesn't hollow her out completely." That was the night she made her first secret decision, a decision that would fester, evolve, and eventually become her silent revenge. In the months following that stormy Thanksgiving, something inside Eleanor Reed quietly shifted. It wasn't anger, at least, not the kind that shouts or slams doors. It was a colder, quieter emotion. The kind that moves beneath the surface, patient and deliberate, like water carving stone. She stopped asking Lisa to visit. Before, she would call every few days, leaving cheerful voicemails. "Hi sweetheart, I made that soup you like, the one with thyme. Call me when you can." Or "I found your old yearbook while cleaning. You were such a beautiful child." Now, she said nothing. She learned the power of absence, how silence could speak louder than pleading. Lisa didn't notice at first. She was busy chasing deadlines, managing portfolios, and curating a version of her life that looked perfect on social media: business lunches, luxury apartments, weekend trips to Napa Valley. She'd post pictures with captions like, "Hard work pays off," and "Another milestone unlocked." But Eleanor saw everything. She followed her daughter's posts quietly, liking each one without comment, her digital applause in an audience of millions. She watched the smiles that didn't reach her daughter's eyes, and she whispered to herself, "One day, she'll remember what real love feels like." Meanwhile, life continued in the slow rhythm of the ordinary. Daniel helped maintain the house on Oakwood Avenue. Amanda visited every Friday with her twins. The old piano in the living room gathered dust until Amanda's kids came around to bang at the keys. But one chair at the table, the one across from Eleanor, remained empty. One afternoon, as I stopped by with groceries, Eleanor greeted me with a strange calm. "Come sit, Nora," she said. "I've made something I've been thinking about for months." On the table was a cup of tea, and a small stack of papers. Her will. I froze. "Eleanor, are you sure you want to be dealing with that now?" She smiled faintly. "I'm not dying yet, dear. I'm just rearranging things. I've realized something about love: it's not enough to give it. Sometimes, you have to measure it." She looked out the window, her hands folded neatly. "Lisa's forgotten what it means to give without calculating the return. I've spent my whole life forgiving her sharp words, excusing her absences. But maybe forgiveness, too, must one day end." That evening, she called her lawyer, Mr. Pearson, and asked to schedule a private meeting. No one, not even her children, knew the details of that meeting. "But I do," she told me later, in confidence, over tea. "I rewrote my will," she said softly. "I left everything to Daniel and Amanda. The house, the savings, the lake cabin, all of it." I gasped. "And Lisa?" She smiled sadly. "Not a dime. But I left her something else. A letter." It was handwritten, folded neatly inside a sealed envelope that would only be opened after Eleanor's passing. The first line read, "My dearest Lisa, if you are reading this, then I have left this world, but I have not left you. You were my joy, my pride, and my sorrow. I raised you to be strong, but strength without tenderness becomes cruelty. I have nothing left to give you, because you never learned how to receive love without measuring its worth." The letter was both farewell and mirror, showing Lisa everything she'd become. I remember feeling torn. "Eleanor, this could destroy her," I said. "She'll think you hated her." Eleanor shook her head. "No, she'll think I saw her. And maybe, in being seen, she'll change. This isn't hatred, Nora. It's justice of the heart." Over the next year, Eleanor withdrew, but not bitterly. She became quieter, more reflective. She took up gardening again, spent afternoons reading by the window, and sometimes, she'd hum old church hymns as she cooked. But every so often, I'd catch her staring at the phone, as though waiting for it to ring. It never did. Christmas came. Lisa sent a bouquet through a delivery service, white lilies and a card that said, "Happy holidays, Mom. Hope you're doing well." No visit. No call. Eleanor didn't cry. She placed the bouquet on her late husband's grave the next day. "She doesn't know what she's losing," she whispered. "But one day she will." Then, fate began its quiet work. In the spring of 2018, Eleanor fell and fractured her hip. She was hospitalized for 2 weeks. Amanda stayed with her through the nights, Daniel handled the bills, but Lisa, she didn't show up until the last day. I was there that morning. Lisa walked into the hospital room wearing a navy suit, her phone still glued to her ear. She looked beautiful, polished, but detached. "Mom," she said quickly, setting her purse on the chair. "I came as soon as I could. There's been a merger at work. You know how it is." Eleanor smiled faintly. "I know, dear. I'm just happy you're here." Lisa's eyes flickered with guilt for a second. Then, almost immediately, she said, I was thinking maybe you should sell the house and move into assisted living. It'd be easier for everyone." Amanda, who'd been sitting quietly by the bed, looked up sharply. "Easier for who, Lisa?" Lisa ignored her. "You could get one of those senior communities with healthcare included. I can help arrange it." Eleanor's face didn't change, but I saw her hands tremble ever so slightly. She turned to the window, the sunlight catching her silver hair. "Thank you, Lisa," she said softly. "I'll think about it." That night, she called me from her hospital bed. Her voice was low, steady, like someone who had made peace with her decision. "Nora," she said, "do you believe a mother has the right to teach her child a lesson, even if it hurts them?" I hesitated. "If it's done out of love, perhaps." She paused. "Then I think I'm ready." By the time she returned home, she had finalized the new will and signed an updated letter. She made copies, sealed them with wax, and placed one in her lawyer's safe. She lived 3 more years after that, long enough to see Daniel get married and Amanda's children start high school. Lisa remained distant, her visits rare, her affection mechanical. But Eleanor never brought it up again. She never mentioned the will, never hinted at the letter. She simply continued to live, quiet, dignified, and waiting for the day her silence would speak louder than any words. The world might call what she did cruel. But to Eleanor it was balance, the only form of revenge that still carried love inside it. The morning Eleanor Reed passed away, Chicago was cloaked in rain. The streets outside Oakwood Avenue glistened under gray skies, and the air smelled of lilacs, the ones she'd planted the previous spring. It was almost poetic, how the world wept for her. I remember standing by her bedside, watching the nurse close her eyes for the last time. The clock read 6:42 a.m. Even in death, her face carried peace, the calm of a woman who had long finished her battles and written her own ending. Amanda arrived first. She collapsed into tears the moment she saw her mother's body, her hands trembling as she whispered prayers. Daniel came later that afternoon, stoic, but his silence spoke volumes. Lisa didn't arrive until the following morning. She entered the house in a beige trench coat, her hair slicked into a perfect bun. The air was thick with the scent of lilies, candles, and grief. Amanda stood at the door, her eyes red. "You missed the vigil," she said softly. Lisa sighed, setting her purse down. "There was a board meeting, Amanda. I left as soon as I could. Let's not start this, okay?" Daniel's voice came from behind her. "It's not about starting anything, Lisa. It's about showing up when it matters." Lisa turned toward him, her expression tight. "I'm here now. Can we please focus on Mom?" There it was again, that tone, that thin veneer of composure that barely masked irritation. I saw Eleanor's reflection in Lisa's eyes for the briefest second, not the mother she was, but the woman Lisa refused to understand. The funeral was small, quiet, and heartbreakingly beautiful. Eleanor had planned it years in advance. The service was held at St. Matthew's Church, the same place she'd been baptized, married, and where she'd sung in the choir for decades. Soft organ music filled the air. Daniel gave a short eulogy, simple and tender. Amanda spoke through tears about her mother's kindness and laughter. When it came time for Lisa to speak, she hesitated. The microphone crackled in her hands. "My mother was devoted," she began, eyes flickering nervously toward the casket. "She always taught us to work hard and be strong. I may not have agreed with her methods, but I know everything she did came from love." There was a pause, long enough for her voice to betray the guilt hiding underneath. After the service, people gathered at the family home for the wake. The smell of coffee and casseroles mingled with whispered condolences. Lisa walked from room to room like a guest, not a daughter. Her eyes lingered on the photographs, her mother smiling with Daniel's children, Amanda and her husband at Christmas, even an old picture of her father in uniform. But there were fewer photos of Lisa. And that, more than anything, unsettled her. As people began to leave, Mr. Pearson, Eleanor's lawyer, approached the siblings. He was an elderly man with silver hair and eyes that carried a lifetime of discretion. "Mrs. Reed asked that the reading of her will take place at the house," he said. "If you're ready, we can proceed." We gathered in the living room, me, Daniel, Amanda, Lisa, and Mr. Pearson. The rain had stopped, but thunder still rumbled far off, like the echo of something unresolved. Mr. Pearson unfolded a sealed envelope and began to read in his calm, measured tone. I, Eleanor Grace Reed, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. The first few paragraphs were formalities, debts, funeral arrangements, charitable donations to the hospital where she'd served. Then came the part everyone had been waiting for. To my son Daniel Reed, I leave the family home on Oakwood Avenue, along with my late husband's tools, and my grandfather's wristwatch, a reminder that hard work and integrity are timeless. Daniel bowed his head, tears glistening in his eyes. To my daughter Amanda Clark, I leave the lake cabin in Michigan, my savings account, and the piano she learned to play on. May its songs remind her of simpler days. Amanda sobbed quietly, clutching Daniel's hand. Then Mr. Pearson paused, his eyes flicking toward Lisa before continuing. To my youngest daughter, Lisa Reed. The room fell utterly still. I leave nothing of material value. The silence that followed was thunderous. Lisa blinked, as though she hadn't heard correctly. What? She said sharply. Mr. Pearson continued, his voice unwavering. Lisa will instead receive a personal letter written in my own hand, to be delivered to her by my attorney. It contains my final words to her, words of love and of truth. Lisa's face turned pale. This has to be a mistake, she said, standing up. Where's the rest of it? She wouldn't do that to me. Mr. Pearson folded the document gently. There's no mistake, Miss Reed. Your mother reviewed this with me several times over the past 2 years. Her intentions were clear. Lisa turned to her siblings. Did you know about this? Did you talk her into it? Amanda shook her head, her tears giving way to anger. No, Lisa. You did this, all on your own. Daniel spoke softly but firmly. She waited for you to show up, Lisa. You never did. Lisa's jaw clenched. She knew I was busy. I sent money, Money isn't love, Amanda said, her voice breaking. You can't outsource care. Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The weight of what had just happened began to settle, slowly, cruelly. Her mother had erased her. Mr. Pearson cleared his throat and handed her a sealed envelope, cream-colored, sealed with wax, and marked simply, "For Lisa. To be read in private." Lisa took it with trembling hands. Her reflection wavered on the glossy paper, like a stranger looking back at her. When the lawyer left, the room felt hollow. Amanda and Daniel went upstairs to sort through their mother's belongings, leaving Lisa sitting alone on the couch, staring at the letter. I sat quietly by the doorway, unseen, watching her. The confident executive I once knew was gone. In her place sat a daughter, lost, furious, and afraid to open an envelope that might destroy what little pride she had left. After a long silence, she whispered, almost to herself. She didn't even say goodbye. But she was wrong. Eleanor had said goodbye, in the only language Lisa had left her, silence and consequence. That night, I saw Lisa drive away into the storm, the letter still unopened in her purse. Her tail lights faded into the rain, a streak of red swallowed by darkness. What waited for her inside that envelope would haunt her more than losing $1 million inheritance ever could. I will never forget that morning, the morning Eleanor's lawyer called. The will was to be read at Anderson & Cole, a modest law firm in downtown Chicago, on a gray March day that seemed to echo the mood of everyone who entered that office. The smell of rain clung to our coats, even the sky felt heavy with secrets. Amanda arrived first, her husband at her side, quiet and supportive. Daniel came alone, pale and drawn, holding the same prayer book he'd clutched at the funeral. Lisa arrived last, dressed in sharp black, sunglasses still on though we were indoors. Her heels announced her presence like a punctuation mark at the end of every step. She didn't greet anyone. She just said, "Let's get this over with." Mr. Cole, the family's longtime attorney, was a thin man in his 60s with a face that looked permanently apologetic. He shuffled through the paperwork, cleared his throat, and said softly, "Mrs. Reed left specific instructions. She also left a letter, for each of you." The air in the room shifted. A strange quiet descended, the kind that feels almost sacred. He began reading the will. Eleanor's estate, valued at just over $1.1 million, including the house, her savings, and a few modest investments, had been divided between Amanda and Daniel. The house, which had stood for 40 years as the family's anchor, was to go to Daniel. Amanda was to receive the remaining assets, Eleanor's pension savings, life insurance, and all personal jewelry. Then came the pause. Lisa's name appeared next, and for a second, I swear I heard her hold her breath. To my daughter Lisa, Mr. Cole continued, his voice steady but heavy, I leave a single key, to the cedar chest in my bedroom closet. Inside, she will find something of mine I hope she will treasure. Lisa blinked. That's it. Mr. Cole nodded sadly. There is also a letter addressed to you. Mrs. Reed asked that I hand it over personally. Lisa's jaw tightened. This has to be a mistake. I'm her daughter. I paid her hospital bills. I took care of things when no one else did. Amanda muttered under her breath, You sent checks, Lisa. That's not the same thing. Lisa turned sharply. Don't start, Amanda. You think just because you live nearby you were the perfect daughter? Mom told me things about you too. Daniel slammed his palm lightly on the table. Enough. Not here. But Lisa wasn't done. She stood abruptly, her voice rising with every word. She was manipulated. Probably by you too. You made her change the will. You made her think I didn't love her. Mr. Cole interjected gently. Mrs. Reed made these decisions entirely on her own. In fact, he looked at me, hesitating. She recorded a private statement, her request, not mine, to be played if there was a dispute. Lisa froze. A recording? He pressed play. The faint hum of the old recorder filled the silence before Eleanor's voice emerged, soft, tired but clear. If you're hearing this, then I'm no longer there to explain myself. Lisa, my darling. I wish things had been different. I loved you, I still do. But love without respect feels like begging for affection from someone who's already turned away. You see, I gave you everything I had, not just money, but the parts of me that never healed after your father died. I thought success would make you happy, that it would protect you. Instead, I watched it build a wall between us. You spoke to me like I was an obligation. You corrected me, dismissed me, rolled your eyes when I tried to speak. I kept forgiving because mothers always do, until I realized that forgiveness without change only becomes permission. This isn't punishment, my dear. It's a lesson, the kind I wish life had taught me earlier. People are not guaranteed to stay, no matter how much we love them. I hope one day you'll open that cedar chest and understand why I made this choice. Mom. When the recording ended, there wasn't a sound in the room. Amanda was quietly crying. Daniel's eyes were fixed on the table. Lisa stood perfectly still, like a statue cracked in half. After a long pause, she whispered, She's wrong. She didn't understand. But her voice broke before she could finish. She grabbed the letter and the key and left the office without another word. That night, she went to her mother's old house. I followed at a distance, part worry, part curiosity, part unfinished loyalty. The streetlights cast long shadows across the driveway where Eleanor used to water her roses. The house was empty now, silent except for the ticking of the old hallway clock. Lisa found the cedar chest easily. It was small, carved with flowers and initials, E+W, for Eleanor and Walter. She opened it slowly. Inside were old photographs, yellowed with age, Lisa as a child in pigtails, holding a kitten, her high school graduation photo, a pressed corsage from her first prom. Beneath them was an envelope, the letter. Her hands trembled as she opened it. I know you'll be angry when you read this. You've always been quick to fight when you feel wronged, and I admire that fire in you, it's what made you so strong. But strength, my dear, is not cruelty. It's kindness that doesn't bend under pressure. When you were little, you used to run into my arms after school, talking about how one day you'd buy me a big house with a garden. I never cared about the house. I only wanted the girl who said it. Somewhere along the line, I lost her, to ambition, to pride, to a world that taught you that vulnerability is weakness. You stopped calling me Mom, and started calling me Eleanor in emails. You stopped visiting because it was too inconvenient. You forgot that love is measured not by distance, but by effort. I changed my will because I wanted you to feel what I felt, the silence, the absence, the realization that love, once taken for granted, disappears quietly. Inside this chest, I've left reminders of who you were before success took over, the child who laughed freely, who sang in the kitchen, who held my hand. I pray that when you see her again, you'll find your way back to me, even if I'm no longer here to open the door. With love always. Mom. By the time she reached the last line, tears were streaming down Lisa's face, heavy broken sobs that came from a place far deeper than anger. She pressed the letter to her chest and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Outside, rain began to fall again, the kind of rain that feels like forgiveness trying to find its way through sorrow. The weeks after the will reading felt like a slow unspooling of everything Lisa thought she understood about herself. Chicago's skyline, once a glittering symbol of her success, now loomed like an accusation, steel and glass reflecting back the hollow person she had become. For days, she avoided calls from Amanda and Daniel. She couldn't face their pity, or worse, their quiet vindication. The letter burned in her mind. She had read it a dozen times, hoping that somehow the meaning would shift, that she'd find a hidden message absolving her guilt. But each word cut deeper, forcing her to confront a truth she had long denied. Her mother hadn't disowned her out of spite, but out of sorrow. Still, pride is a stubborn flame. When the news broke that Eleanor's estate had been divided between the other two siblings, gossip spread fast. Some of Lisa's colleagues whispered behind her back, a few even offered sympathy that tasted like mockery. The daughter cut out of $1 million will, it became a headline, a rumor, a cautionary tale for the city's upper circles. She could have let it go. But grief and humiliation have a way of poisoning reason. Within a month, Lisa filed a lawsuit to contest the will, claiming undue influence and mental instability. That was when the real reckoning began. The courtroom was cold, impersonal, the kind of place where emotion becomes evidence and love becomes paperwork. I sat in the back, unable to look away as the family tore itself apart under oath. Amanda testified first, her voice trembling. Mom was perfectly lucid when she made her decisions. She even told me she'd rewritten the will to teach Lisa something about love. Daniel confirmed it. She said, "I don't want to leave her money. I want to leave her meaning." Those were her exact words. When Lisa took the stand, she looked smaller somehow, her sharp confidence replaced by brittle defensiveness. She wasn't herself those last few months, she said, eyes darting toward the judge. She was lonely. I tried to help, but Amanda and Daniel turned her against me. I only wanted to protect her. But the evidence told a different story. Mr. Cole presented recordings, medical reports, even handwritten notes from Eleanor's hospice nurse. In each, Eleanor's voice was clear, deliberate. She had known exactly what she was doing. When the judge finally spoke, his tone was gentle but final. The court finds no evidence of undue influence or incapacity. The will stands as written. Lisa didn't move. The gavel fell, and in that instant, something inside her seemed to break, not loudly, but like a thread snapping after being pulled too long. In the weeks that followed, Lisa withdrew from everyone. Her apartment became a cocoon of silence. The city she once ruled now felt like a punishment, every familiar corner haunted by memories she couldn't escape. One evening, she drove to her mother's grave at Oakwood Cemetery, a place she hadn't visited since the funeral. It was late, the kind of stillness only found at the edge of night. She stood before the marble stone engraved with Eleanor Reed, beloved mother and friend, and for a long time, she said nothing. Then she spoke softly, her voice trembling with the weight of all she had lost. "Mom, I thought I was doing everything right. I worked hard. I built something. But maybe I forgot what I was building for." The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of wet grass and lilac, Eleanor's favorite flower. Lisa knelt, placing the letter she had carried everywhere since that night on the ground beside the headstone. "I understand now," she whispered. "You didn't cut me out. You were trying to wake me up." Tears blurred her vision as she looked at her reflection on the polished stone. "I should have come home sooner. I should have listened." She stayed there until dawn, the first light spilling across the graves like forgiveness. When she finally stood, there was a quiet resolve in her eyes, not to reclaim what she'd lost, but to honor what she had ignored. Months passed. Lisa sold her downtown apartment and moved back to the neighborhood where she grew up. She found a modest teaching position at a local community college, mentoring young women in finance, teaching them not just how to make money, but how not to let it own them. She also began volunteering at the hospice where her mother had spent her final months. The first time she entered the ward, she almost turned back, the smell of antiseptic and soft piano music reopening wounds she thought had scarred over. But she stayed. She held hands, listened to strangers' stories, and found something she had long buried: empathy. One of the nurses recognized her from the newspaper. "You're Eleanor's daughter, aren't you?" Lisa nodded, hesitating. "She talked about you," the nurse said kindly. "Every day. She said she was proud of how strong you were. She just wished you'd slow down long enough to see yourself the way she did." Lisa smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "She always saw the best in me, even when I didn't deserve it." A year later, the old family house was sold. Daniel and Amanda invited Lisa to join them for the final walkthrough. To everyone's surprise, she came. As they walked through the empty rooms, Lisa stopped at the kitchen doorway, the same spot where her mother used to hum while stirring a pot of soup. The faint sound of that memory filled her mind, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel anger or guilt. She felt gratitude. "I think she knew this would bring us back together," Amanda said softly. Lisa nodded. "She always did. Even when she was gone, she knew exactly what she was doing." Before leaving, she went upstairs one last time to her mother's bedroom. The cedar chest was still there, though now empty. She placed a new envelope inside. "To Mom. You were right. Success means nothing without someone to share it with. I lost you once, but in losing everything, I finally found myself. I love you, Lisa." She closed the lid gently, like tucking away a secret that no longer hurt. As I watched her walk down the front steps that day, sunlight caught the edge of her face, and for a moment, she looked just like Eleanor, calm, centered, free. Eleanor's revenge had never been about cruelty or punishment. It was about awakening, a final act of love disguised as justice. And in the end, it worked. Because the daughter who had once treated love as an obligation finally understood its worth, not through inheritance, but through loss. Sometimes, in the quiet corners of grief, we find the lessons we were too proud to learn in life. Eleanor Reed's story wasn't just about revenge, it was about a mother's final attempt to be heard, and a daughter's painful journey toward redemption. In the stillness that followed, one truth remained. Love unreturned may break the heart, but love withheld, when done with purpose, can heal the soul that broke it.